Really awesome. Here's another picture of the corpus callosum. Let me see if I can enlarge this a little bit. Here you can see in this picture, this is actually a cadaver, where you're looking underneath and you can see how the fibers spread from left to right. In this picture here, somebody's animation, you can even see that they depicted that corpus callosum as little wings, and here are the thalamuses right here. So to me it's super interesting stuff, how that correlates to information that's been before us all along, old age and new age. So this beetle is a representation of the thalamus, which is really the sun god Ra. And this thalamus, once this whole part of the brain, the limbic brain, gets lit up, since it's the central part, it spreads light to the more advanced parts of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, and into the lower mind. So it's illuminating the underworld. If you look at our brain as in the underworld, the middle world, and the upper world, light gets to stream down into the underworld, and that gets illuminated too. So there it is. This scarab is inside of our head also. Here, another very popular Egyptian representation of a god. Here we got, on this page, we got a statue of a scarab down here below. And the interesting thing about the scarab, or Khepir, which was the god's name, is it actually means transformation. And you can Google this. Most of this comes from Google. So basically the scarab means the transforming strength of Ra. So there it goes back to the sun god, the sun disk, and that is actually inside of our heads. Another word that is connected with that is manifesting. So as we open that and tune into that power, we begin to open our own manifesting power within ourselves. Some other translations of the scarab, the sun god, is to come into being, to become, or to transform. And two more other translations is a mode of being, or what has come into being. So the more that we get back in touch with this part of our mind and open it, that's really where we start to tune into our ability to create more and more. And it has a lot to do with what we visualize and our emotions attached to our visualization. So if you turn on the TV and you let yourself be shown images that put negativity into your mind, you're letting that control your hormonal releases and how your chakra system will work. Because basically, the endocrine system is the physical manifestation of the chakra system. And the endocrine system runs on hormones which are governed mainly by the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus releases the instructions to the pituitary, and the pituitary releases the hormones that make each endocrine do what it's supposed to do. So our emotions are key, extremely important to how and what we do within our mind, our body, and in the world. And we got to get control over that and not just let ourselves be tuned in to what other people want us to be tuned into. The solar deity. So now we know that the scarab and Ra and Horus are pretty much one in the same. And here I'm going to throw out the hypothesis that even that means Jesus too. So Jesus is a newer representation of the solar deity. So Jesus is actually referring to that part in our mind that the Horus and Ra are referring to. And this little page here, you can Google this on your own. There's so much stuff I could go into. I don't want to take up too much time going to all of this, but you can do your own research. There are a myriad of beings in mythology and legend that had similar lives to that of Jesus, and some of those predated Jesus. Horus and Ra, the sun god, is one such being. So now we have a tie to the brain relating to Jesus, because now we know that Ra is a clue to the true power within us, and it's about our brain. And Jesus is being linked to a solar deity, which is Ra. So basically, Jesus is representing this part of our brain also. And this got me to thinking really, I was raised Baptist, and I've had to go through years of deprogramming. But still, I find little bitty tricky things in my mind that were implanted, God knows when, very long time ago. But something that really started bothering me recently is that in a way, Jesus has become a false idol. Jesus has become something that we worship or bow to instead of going directly to God. So we had to go through Jesus. And it's even said in the Bible that, no one, here we have John 14:6-13. And 6 says, "No one comes to the Father except through me." This is Jesus saying this. And my translation of this, because I meditated on a while, if Jesus represents that part of our mind, the higher limbic emotional brain, I really think that it's not meant that we have to go through Jesus as an idol or something separate from God, but we need to go through that part of our mind to be able to connect to God personally, so that we begin to see and experience and feel God on a daily basis. And I don't care what term you assign to God. It can be universe, love, whatever it is. When we go through that part of our brain, and we could call that Jesus, once we go through that part of our brain, we're going through it, like Jesus says, no one comes to the Father except through me. So we have to go through the higher aspect of our mind, which is the raw, Horus, the scarab. Once we go through that, we do have direct connection to God. In the Ten Commandments, the number one commandment is, "Thou shalt not have other gods before me." So if that's true, if God said there should be no one before me, then if we put Jesus before God, that becomes a false idol too. There's so many deities and gods out there that we're focusing on that I personally believe we need to be awakening within us, because to me they represent aspects of ourselves. Sometimes it may be that God, like Mercury, represents the nervous system and signals going up and down the spinal cord, which is interesting because Mercury is known as the messenger, and angels, I'm going to go over a slide in a second, angels are also known as messengers, but they totally relate to the spinal cord. Really cool stuff that I'll show you here in a second. So let me go ahead and read here John 14:6-13. And this is Jesus talking to his disciples. Jesus said to him, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." And you know now that I totally believe that means we have to go through that part. We have to go through that part within us that Jesus represents, which is our higher mind. If we're not in touch with that, if we're not in control of our emotions and our focus, then we're unable to fully plug back into God. "If you know me, then you will also know my Father." So that indicates that Jesus has done that within himself. So he was a way shower, right? He had done that within himself. So he had already unified that part of his mind. And at that point, he was aware that when you do that, you are one with God. And he used the term Father. "From now on, you do know him and have seen him." Philip said to him, "Master, show us the Father, and that will be enough for us." So basically, they're wanting proof. And Jesus said to him, "Have I been with you for so long a time, and you still do not know me, Philip? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'? Do you not believe that I am the Father, and the Father is in me? The words that I speak to you, I do not speak on my own. The Father who dwells in me is doing this work." So when you're really in touch with that aspect of God, God pours into you, more into you. It's not that it isn't in us right now. It's like we're activating it more and more, the more that we work from our higher perceptions of our mind, not the lower mind. So here's somebody wanting proof that he is who he says he is. And to me, Jesus was a way shower. This is something that we're all supposed to be doing. It's not something Jesus did. That's just my personal belief. "Believe me that I am the Father, and the Father is in me, or else believe because the works themselves." So he says, Jesus is saying, if you can't believe what I'm telling you, that I am the Father, then believe in his miracles, his ability to heal people. "Amen, amen, I say to you, whoever believes in me will do the works that I do, and will do greater ones than these, because I am going to the Father." So basically Jesus is saying, if you can believe and get in touch with this part of your mind, you have the ability to heal and do things that Jesus did, and even more greater things. And this is Jesus himself saying that. So to me, I'm not saying that Jesus wasn't a being or a human or a son of God. I believe we're all of those ourselves. We're all sons and daughters of God, the universe, and we all have a birthright, that connection. But we have to reawaken it. We've gone to sleep. We've fallen down into our lower minds, into our reptilian mind, basically drawn there by desire and illusion. And now it's time to wake up and stretch up to the higher aspects of ourselves so that we can have continual, constant connection to the Spirit and universe and know it. You know, now we have ideas and we have thoughts and we have momentary ahas about spiritual things, but imagine being in that and living it all the time. That is being fully awakened and fully enlightened. And I've said this before, but I'm going to go ahead and read what I got here. The way is not through Jesus in the physical sense, unless you realize that Jesus represents the higher function of anyone's mind or brain, the thalamus being the central structure. Through accessing and opening this part of our mind, we are one with God. So to me, that ties it up pretty good. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Some of the other videos went over this a little bit. And just to kind of throw in some other aspects of the eye, Horus, or the limbic brain, we have the pineal gland, which is the masculine gland related to the crown chakra. You know, and a king or a queen wears a crown. So once we get into this higher functioning part of our brain and we're not just driven by our lower brain, we begin to be more, well, dare I say, godlike. And it's like we get to have our king or queenship, and we begin, this crown of ours begins to open more and more. This is the halo that was represented above Jesus. There's also been pictures of Buddha with halo above his head too. So it's like that crown chakra really being open, and the connection to God. It's not something we kind of feel momentarily or we guess that's happening. We actually know it. There's no second guessing it. It's a known sense, a known feeling. And the pineal gland is named because it looks very similar to a pine cone. And to me, it's like the pin. You know, it's like a pin piercing into heaven. In Matthew 19:24, I can guarantee that it is easier for a camel to squeeze through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And I'm not going to go into that saying, but basically it's talking about when you're attached to a lot of earthly things, it's hard to enter heaven. Here is a representation of, not a representation, this is basically a pine cone. And you can see the pi mathematics just within this. You see the spirals. If you look at a pine cone, it's really amazing how you have all these amazing mathematics showing up in the spiral of the cone and its little parts. This is another pine cone. Like you got the point pointing to the top of its head. And so basically golden mean structure all the way through. And that leads right into Buddha. So on a lot of the Buddha statues, you see that they have like this beaded hairdo going up at the top. That's exactly to represent the pineal gland. So all these truths out there were always hidden in pictures and in representations, just like the eye of Horus is a representation of a higher part of our mind, the thalamus. And here is the Buddha statue giving us a clue about the pineal gland piercing heaven and opening heaven up to us, or opening the gate of heaven to us. So what you just learned about the pine cone shows you whenever you look at a Buddha statue and you see that little pine on top of their head, it's referring to opening that aspect into heaven, opening the door. And we do that by getting more and more touch with our feelings and our visuals and being able to control those and govern those, not letting the outside world dictate, but going inside and then projecting those outwardly. Here's a picture of the sinuses. I'm going to go over this at a different time. The sphenoid ties a lot into the sinuses and the senses, and I've gone over that in a past video. So you might be saying that a lot of this I'm making up, maybe some of it's a stretch, but what's really interesting is this particular page here. This is the courtyard of the Pigna or pine cone, and this is in the Vatican. Super interesting because here you've got this huge pine cone, which is about 30 feet tall. You've got two, I believe it's peacocks on the side. You got two birds, and then you have a sarcophagus right here. This is a complete representation of the bird brain. You see how they have this huge arch? That's the skull. See the round? Mostly all the temples that were made represented the mind, because they knew that that's how we connected to God, through our own mind. So we carry a temple around with us all the time. Our body is our temple, right? And just take a moment and think about your body And there's a part of your body called the temple, right? If you reach up and touch the temple of your skull, if you do it right now, you take both hands and touch both sides of your temple. The part that you're touching is the sphenoid bone. And if you've already looked at my video about the sphenoid bone, you now know that the sphenoid bone is the Ark of the Covenant. So it's awesome that they built all these outward structures to represent what we have inside our head. We don't need to go to church to have that access. We have it with us every moment of the day and night. So here's just an outward representation of the skull, the underneath. The pine cone is the pineal. The two birds flanking that represents the bird brain. And the sarcophagus would be tying into the Ark of the Covenant, because the sphenoid bone has a little indentation that the pituitary sits in. So basically you have the pine cone, which is the pineal, and the pituitary gland in the limbic brain. Awesome stuff. If you look in the background here, you'll see a round golden sphere. And I'm going to go over that in a second. And you may think, okay, surely the Pope doesn't know about this. Surely, this just happens to be something that, is just by chance. Well, there's nothing by chance here. They've known about this for a while, and, basically in lots of ways we are manipulated and controlled by what they're representing here. By controlling your emotions and your feelings of fear, of anger, just by turning on a TV, you can be controlled very easily. Here is a staff of the Pope's, and look, he's got a little pine cone on the staff. The staff is your chakra system. So basically the Pope's here got your chakra system in his hand, and he's got a hold of your pine cone, your crown chakra, your pituitary gland, your third eye. So the Pope is controlling what you see, hear, think. Here's that little round sphere that I was pointing to in the slide before. So this is in the courtyard of the Vatican, which is a lot set up like like Mecca. It's a huge open area, and this golden sphere is actually supposed to be a representation of the Kaaba, the stone that they circle around in Mecca, where they put their prayers on. And basically, I've done this in another video, is that whole ritual of going around the Kaaba, which basically means Kabbalah, while all these people dressed in white circling around this black stone, it's a galactic representation. It's a galactic ritual. So you have the black stone, which is the black yin, black hole at the center of our galaxy, and then you have all the stars circling around, and then they circle around counterclockwise 7 times, and then they make their way to kiss the black stone and put their prayers on that. It's basically a yin and yang galactic ritual that they play. But this is a really interesting structure here. It's a golden sphere. It's called sphere. It's called Sphere Within Sphere, and it was done in 1990. And it makes me think of Wheels Within Wheels, which is another representation of the Merkaba, which is the chariot that carries us in our energy body. And here it looks like an eyeball. I just put a joke here. Be careful, the Pope is watching. So this is in the Vatican. Really interesting structure. It's like an eye structure, wheel within wheels. It's called the Sphere Within Sphere. Now that would be just interesting within itself. But here we've got a very similar structure. It's got the gold and it's cracked open with a little black. And this one was located in the courtyard of the World Trade Center. It's where the 2 towers went down in 9/11. And actually in the movie Fight Club, they blow up a little golden sphere, and it's actually a representation of this one. So in the movie Fight Club, they blow up this little golden sphere. And again, this golden sphere is supposed to represent the Kaaba, which ties into Mecca. So why would our American World Trade Center have a Kaaba and the Vatican have a Kaaba? When, I'll tell you why. Basically, it means that the Kaaba is our Merkaba center, our energy around us. And if you can control that, because if you do a 3D Merkaba and you hold it in a certain way, it is a cube. Okay? It's basically a square. And if you control people's energy, you control everything. You control the consciousness, you can rule the world. And it's interesting in Fight Club that they blew this up in one of the scenes, and in the very last scene, if you haven't seen that movie, it's not for everyone, but it's interesting anyway. In the background, they see all these buildings falling, and then there's two left at the very end. So there's like, if I remember right, there's 4 or 5 buildings being blown up. But in the very last scene, there winds up kind of being 2 central, and then they get blown up and fall at the same time. And that was before 9/11 happened. So there's lots of conspiracy theories around that. I'm not going to throw too much of that out. You can have your own conclusion. But it's interesting that this little sphere is ties into Mecca and into the Vatican, the Pope. I'm just going to rehash just a little bit here with the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland sits within the sphenoid bone, which is why I think that sarcophagus in the Vatican represented that little hole that you would lay inside of. So pituitary sits right inside the sphenoid bone, and the sphenoid bone is the Ark of the Covenant. And notice that it looks like a mushroom. And I've mentioned this before, but mushrooms, psychedelics, tend to blow open the third eye, and that's why people get all kinds of weird visuals and streamers and stuff. The only downside to drugs is that they're not controllable, and since the third eye is related to illumination, the dark negative side is illusion or deceit. So drugs can sometimes twist people off in the bad direction, where they begin to have bad hallucinations, and they lose touch with all of reality. And here again we have the owl-shaped sphenoid bone that the pituitary sits within. This is the last slide I'm going to share today, and it's just some more representations within the body. You know, I've heard the tree of life, right? Here you've got a tree, which is basically a toroidal field. You've got the same amount going underground as reaching up. You have your brain and the nervous system that looks like another tree. And then you have another fractal aspect. You have we have tons of nerve cells within us, and we have the dendrites, which is like the top of the tree. And then we have the long connective cell part of the nerve. So basically, our nerves are like little trees too. Stairway to heaven. People have asked me about if everything fits in the body, what about the angels? And the angels fit in perfectly. Jacob had a dream about angels going up and down a staircase, and the angels are messengers, right? Messengers from heaven. So we have heaven represented by the upper crown chakra, and then the earth represented by the root chakra. So the messengers go up and down the ladder, which is our spine, and they bring messages back and forth from God to us and from us to God. That's exactly what Mercury represents. Mercury is the one that governs the nervous system and is about bringing messages down to the physical body, which are motor, and then the signals that go back to the brain are sensory. So it's a two-way street. And that's Jacob's dream about the angels going up and down, descending and ascending the stair. And this is basically, I think, Jacob's ladder, is the spinal cord. And older text says that there were 7 archangels, and the archangels are like the highest angels. And we have 7 cervical vertebrae. Those are the 7 cervical vertebrae, upper vertebrae of our spine, and there's 7 of them, which is interesting because there's 7 archangels. And I'm going to blow this picture up here to show you something. Let me do a little bit more. Okay, I'm just blowing this picture up. This is a section of the different parts of the spine. Look how it has like angel wings. And each one has a different type of structure to it. So each little slice, each little vertebrae has a different type of wing structure within it. To me, the angels are related to the spinal cord and brings messages to and from the body. Pretty cool. Also, at the they say that our energy is coiled up at the base of our spine, which is the sacrum. And a lot of times you hear about people that pass away. One of the most common things they talk about is a tunnel of light that they go through, and they see memories and things from the past. Well, I believe what happens is when somebody passes away, some of their consciousness, which is in the root, which is where the Kundalini resides, a lot of your root power, your root consciousness, as someone passes away, what happens is that consciousness begins to rise back up out of the body through the spinal cord. So that is the tunnel of light, and the nervous system carries memory. So as you're going through this little tunnel of light, memories are coming through you that you're reliving things that you did in the past. And then of course as you go up, you go out the spot that used to be the soft spot where the energy came in or the consciousness came in. And that tunnel of light leaving is basically going through the spinal cord and all the memories associated with the nervous system. Another cool representation. So my next video, that pretty much sums up today. My next video series is, I'm really going to get into the aspects of how we are controlled through what we eat, see, hear, everything. And it has a lot to do with how our brain chemistry is manipulated. And it's really interesting. There are things that you can do to start changing how things affect you. And the more and more our world gets polluted, the more it affects us. So it's important to start taking control over our thoughts, our feelings, what we see, what we put out into the world, and what we put into our bodies. And by doing that, we gain more and more control over ourselves, which to me is ultimately what we're here to do. We're here to master this thing called free will, to master our consciousness. Why would we get something and then have it taken away? We're given free will to master it. And through the experiences in life, we are given more and more opportunity to work through and know how to use our will and create. So, thank you all very much. I hope you all gained a lot. If you have any questions, you can feel free to email me and leave a message. Namaste.